Hey everybody, John the Other here, obviously. And you may recall that in the past couple of years, feminists have rammed a model of sexual consent onto the public that really does not conform to the way people in the real world have sex. I'm talking about affirmative consent, of course. This is the kind of sex in which a grown-assed adult woman is so helpless, so fragile, so incapable and lacking of any personal will or ability to speak, that whatever toxically male, hyper-masculine, penis-sporting oppressor might cast his penetrating gaze on her with sexual intention, that he must solicit her continued, ongoing, and affirmative consent if he doesn't want to land himself, in a courtroom, or a college star chamber, or a jail cell, defending himself against sexual misconduct or sexual assault allegations. And as absurd, as silly, as foolish as affirmative consent is, some people have tried to put it into actual practice, soliciting positive feedback from a sexual partner in the style of like an enthusiastic Yelp review, talking in glowing terms about your customer service and cocksmanship. Insurance, I suppose, against the flippant moodiness of a millennial female who really and truly believes that her enthusiastic and aggressive participation can be transformed legally into a criminal rape when she tells her story of sexual conquest, and her friend's response, instead of, "Oh, that sounds so hot," is, "Oh, you had sex with that loser? OMG. Oops, rewind the tape." And now, instead of being a willing participant, she was sexually assaulted. Right. And for a great many men accused falsely, it has been text messages and emails and voice messages, and in some cases video recordings made either directly before or after a sexual encounter that have kept them out of jail on a knowingly false accusation. And we've seen in the media, these accusations are very often made for reasons of spite, or to cover up embarrassment, or to escape from inconvenience like being late for work, or for the personal aggrandizement of the phony victim. Because there are some really, really significant benefits and powers gained when you gain the status of being a victim. You gain moral superiority. You gain access to a huge amount of financial reward. You gain political power. You gain access to the media as a celebrity victim. Some people even gain a career path based on nothing except being a phony victim. So to that whiny rhetorical question asked so often by victims' rights advocates, why would she lie? Well, the victims' rights advocates in this case are asking you to explain to them what it is that victims' rights advocates do. Why would she lie? Because the victims' rights advocates are in the business of enabling financial and political scam artists. But getting back to the business of, humping. On some college campuses, as early as 2012, the affirmative consent propagandists began imitating the satire and the parody of themselves that was being made by creating and distributing consent documentation kits. These would be pedantic forms to be filled in with a list of agreed on sexual acts and signature lines at the bottom. I have created forms like this, and I have asked people to sign them, even knowing how silly and absurd they are. And I did so knowing that it would make me look like a weirdo, or more of a weirdo. But that is how stupid this rape culture propaganda has become. Now let's say you actually got as paranoid as this, and you actually started using sexual consent forms. I, the undersigned, agree that later today I will be performing the following sex acts, or I will have the following sex acts performed on me, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Sign at the bottom, here's my driver's license number. If we get to that level of paranoia, your life is now so paranoid and dysfunctional that this is how you carry on with your pals, with your friends, with the people you hang out with, and presumably the people who on occasion you have sex or sexual encounters with. And they are also as paranoid and dysfunctional as this, and neurotic. So that everybody in your social circle starts using these extremely pedantic and horrifyingly stultifying sexual consent forms, tediously listing out the sex acts that they're going to engage in. At that level of paranoia, this would also require that all of the non-sexual stuff that everybody's doing with all the friends all the time, that's also going to need sexual consent forms, because things like being affectionate with your friends, patting somebody on the back, flirtation. You need consent forms for all of that too, in an environment where a college star chamber can terminate your future career because you flirted with some girl who flirted back with you, but then she got the cold shoulder from her friends because they didn't approve of you as being a Trump supporter or a free speech advocate, or you're not vegan enough for them, or whatever. So let's assume that we've all reached that level of operational paranoia because we've actually bought into the extremely stupid idea of rape culture. I know nobody's actually that stupid. Let's pretend. Right now, this is the current law in Canada, what I'm about to read you. Section 276 of the Criminal Code, which I'll put a link to in the low bar. In proceedings in respect of an offense under sections 151, 152, and so on and so forth, evidence that the complainant has engaged in sexual activity, whether with the accused or with another person, is not admissible to support an inference that, by reason of the sexual nature of the activity, the complainant is more likely to have consented to the sexual activity that forms the subject matter of the charge, or is less worthy of belief. That's the existing text of the law right now, section 276 of the Criminal Code. And that part of the law says that basically if some person making a complaint of being sexually assaulted has a history of sexually promiscuous or slutty behavior, you cannot bring that into your defense, because if they had sex with 25 other people, their sexual history is not relevant under the color of law to your defense that you had a reasonable expectation that they consented. And I understand that. That's reasonable. That makes sense. Bill C-51 adds the following. For the purpose of this section, sexual activity includes any communication made for a sexual purpose or whose content is of a sexual nature. So not only under the new law, once it's passed, not only can you not bring in the sexual history of a complainant, you can't bring in any communications that you had with them pertaining to the sexual activity in question. And this is the law being talked about in the mainstream as modernizing, they call it modernizing the criminal code. The Toronto Star calls this in their headline, "A bill to clean up criminal code clarifies sex assault laws." Clarifies. They call this proposed change something that, quote, boosts protection for sex assault victims. Now, is there such a thing as a false complaint? Not based on this headline. The word victim skips us neatly and cleanly over the inquiry into facts that a courtroom, that a criminal court is supposed to perform. Do we believe in our present society that all complaints of sexual misconduct or sexual assault are all definitionally true? Do we think that? And if we do actually believe something as obviously stupid as that, how much more public spectacle are we going to require of the endless train of false accusation stories in the news before we figure out that complaints of sex assault cases, complainants are frequently lying because we have made being a victim into a high-status career path. Of course, many of them are lying. How many people have to go to jail before we figure out that women are actually humans capable of telling a personally advantageous falsehood? How much more human carnage do we need? How many of our kids do we need to see criminalized into unemployability because, like all other humans who ever came before them, they had sex and then a girl felt bad about it afterwards? And by the way, if you're a feminist, you know, I mean, I trust that you know, after this law, Bill C-51 passes, you, the feminist, are rightly and correctly to be regarded as a threat to be avoided in all social situations. You get that, right? Like, that's going to happen. Bill C-51, should it pass, will remove any ability of an accused person to defend themselves against a fraudulently, knowingly fake sex assault accusation. And it will fundamentally make null, it will nullify the concept of sexual consent and make void the legal right of an accused person to defend themselves with evidence. It will do all those things. Not just in sex assault cases too, by the way. It's going to spill over into other areas of law. And nobody in the news or in the media or social commentary writing about this seems to have noticed this yet. I mean, it's right in the text of the law. No, they're just protecting victims. That's all this does. It's just protecting victims, because victims of false accusations are apparently not a real thing, right? Now, notwithstanding the endless train of media reporting on exactly this issue, and the fact that this proposed law violates your most basic and fundamental right to make full answer in defense of an accusation, it also violates the Canadian Charter. But none of that is going to stop this law. When the Canadian Judicial Council pointed out that Bill C-337 violated the Canadian Charter, the Liberal government's response to that was to fast-track the bill into law just a few weeks ago. Which may be why there is nothing except a resounding silence from the Canadian Judicial Council now. They're terrified, I guess, of objecting, because the flagrant illegality and unconstitutionality of this bill, if it is pointed out in public, they fear will spur the Canadian Liberal government into rushing the bill into law even faster. I wish I was kidding about that. The Canadian Judicial Council is, so far, silent. And it is my opinion that that is due to fear. But this law, once passed, makes a really profound and fundamental change to your basic civil rights, which is to say, it eliminates them. And expanding that further, that means that it makes a fundamental change to the structure of Canadian society. The people within Canadian society are going to have to change the way they conduct themselves and behave. So here's my prediction. Women who are not vetted, that is to say, who do not have an established and long-standing reputation in a closed circle of reputable friends, including men, women who lack this reputation for very stable behavior, very conservative behavior, no, silliness. Women lacking this reputation are going to find themselves increasingly excluded and shunned, and in fact, barred from access to social situations where men of either high social standing or high personal accomplishment can be found. If you're relatively unknown, people don't know you, you don't have an established circle of friends to back up your reputation, your female reputation as being very ladylike and conservative and stable and reliable and not a crazy person. If you lack that reputation, the people of high social esteem, particularly men, will refuse to deal with you, will ban you and bar you and disallow you inside their closed social circles. And closed social circles are going to become increasingly a major feature of whether or not you have any life in public. The only people who will allow women, in my prediction, who don't have this extremely high, stable, very socially conservative, buttoned-down reputation. Lacking that reputation, the only men who will allow women anywhere into their lives will be men of almost no accomplishment, no intelligence, who are financial losers, who are extremely stupid and foolish. That'll be who women lacking this hyper-conservative, buttoned-down, long-standing and guaranteed reputation, that's all they'll be able to get access to. We're about to see Canadian society become sex segregated along these lines. Women are going to be increasingly barred from major sectors of public life through social consensus. And because I don't think that women are fundamentally stupid, I think they're just as intelligent as men, and socially more intelligent, more capable in the social sphere and in the kind of social communication sphere, because women have such a high capability there. And this is an obvious outcome of the way the law is changing. I have to believe that this segregated type of a society where women are barred from major areas of public life is, in fact, what women actually want. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen overnight. It won't happen in the political short time frame that these laws are being passed within. Now, as some of you know, I'm part of a nonprofit group called the Lighthouse Project, which has the mandate of protecting the civil rights of the falsely accused, mostly in Canada, but elsewhere as well. We do this for free for our clients. We don't charge the money, and we hope to get support of the public in doing this. Now, if you are a legal professional, a lawyer, a retired police officer, an ex-cop, a legal activist, and you care about this, we definitely want to hear from you. So there's some contact information in the low bar of this video. If you're none of those things, but you just want to help support this, there's also a Patreon link in the low bar as well. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, have a lovely, lovely day.